When I graduated from college, I took up a job that I thought was a dream come true. The gig of a lifetime. My job was to travel around the country and meet with business people to purchase and set up software to manage some operations. It's pretty boring stuff to me now, but back then, I learned all of the ins and outs of it in order to move up in the company and get better commissions. The company paid for hotel stays and gave me an allowance to spend on food when I got to a new town, and all I was in charge of was making my meetings on time and doing well on my reviews. Well, one time, I arrived in a town I hadn't visited before, and despite the many warnings to pack certain things, I completely forgot about my laptop charger, and had to look for one on arrival. At the time, that alone felt like the end of the world to me, risking not finding an open electronics store in order to make my early meeting, so I got on an Uber to make the drive to a mall-type area to search for a laptop charger that same night before everything closed. The first store didn't have one, but I found it at a second store about 10 minutes away from there. My second hurdle was to find a place to stay since I wasn't able to confirm my stay through the email saved on my laptop, and it got canceled automatically. I had to search around through an Airbnb type of app to find a place that late. Fortunately, there was a house, 2 bedrooms at a super low cost, even though I really only needed 1 room. I thought I had gotten lucky after seeing just how cheap and close it was to where my meeting was supposed to be held the next day. I booked for that same night and got the confirmation immediately. When I got there, the porch lights were off, but the owner, or whoever was in charge of the place, had left the key exactly where they said it would be. There was a note on the door welcoming me by name to the house. The note was on a post-it over a Chinese takeout menu, and stuck all the way in the back was a menu of a pizza delivery restaurant. For some reason, my job took forever to reimburse payments made through food delivery apps, so ordering takeout like that would work out perfectly. The house itself was old, or maybe I just wasn't used to houses like those, made out of creaky wood, and honestly, I had no way to see what the color of the house was. It was just too dark outside. Soon, I'd realize that it would be pretty dark inside too. When I first stepped in and flicked on the light, the only response that came on was that of an old desk lamp on the corner of the living room. I looked around for the ceiling light switch, but I was so tired I didn't even bother. I didn't even order food that night. I just walked over to one of the bedrooms and flicked on the light switch. Same thing. A tiny lamp on an old desk flicked on by the corner of the room, reflecting off an enormous picture right in the middle of the wall across from the door. It was too dark to see what it was about, but it felt completely out of place. It did give off enough light to let me find the bathroom out in the hall, which was also lit by a dim lamp. So I washed up and got ready to go to sleep. The light itself was so dim that I decided to leave it on, since I still needed to find the outlets to plug in the chargers for my phone and the laptop. Plus, the switch to turn it off was all the way across the room. It was strange. Before I started traveling so much, I would have problems sleeping in new places. But I guess I must have gotten used to it at some point, because as soon as I plugged everything in and set my alarm, I drifted off to sleep in a few minutes. That wouldn't last long though. It was around 2 or 3 a.m. when I first heard it. A tiny knock on the door. I opened my eyes wide and was able to see the entire room thanks to that dim orange light from the lamp in the corner. I hadn't checked the rest of the house like I normally did when I got to a new Airbnb, snooping around the bathroom cabinets and stuff. An odd habit, I know. To my left was a large frame of the picture on the wall, reflecting the lamp itself, making the thing feel like a huge mirror. I turned my head toward it, and as expected, I could see the reflection of the bedroom door, the desk, and the lamp. But I was completely out of view. I remember the place giving me the feeling of my grandma's house, with that smell of old wood. But that desk lamp, along with the wooden furniture and its long shadows, made the place feel colder than it was. I stopped breathing for a little bit, just to hear for that same tapping noise again. There it was. I jumped a little bit when I saw a moving shadow followed right by the tapping sound once again. I sat up on the bed and heard it again. It was coming from the desk. But then I heard the buzzing sound. I'm not sure what you call those bugs that look like larger ladybugs, but there was one flying around the lamp, and it kept bumping into the lampshade, then falling onto the desk, flipping itself over again and flying around until, sure enough, it went straight back into the lampshade and knocked itself to the desk again. I felt relieved. Figured it would be best to turn off the lamp. I uncovered myself from the blanket and rolled out into the warm, carpeted floor. As I walked over to the desk, my own reflection caught my attention from across the room. The image of that glass moved with me as I took a step, then stopped, and looked right toward the picture on the wall. It was a photo of a bedroom. Well, it was sort of like a portrait. A man was standing, dressed in completely black clothing, looking right at the camera, with a sinister smile traced throughout his face with his own wrinkles. It made me feel uneasy, so I flicked off the switch and went straight back to my bed, trying to not accidentally look at that picture on my way back. Even though it was probably too dark to see anyway, I didn't want to risk it. My whole night was strange. I thought I kept waking up to the voices of people calling my name, asking me what was wrong, and then the sounds of panicked voices asking for a person whose name I completely forgot. I remember feeling sweaty when they asked me where this person was, and I didn't know what to say. I blamed those nightmares on that picture on the wall. I woke up tired, promptly at 6 a.m., but didn't hesitate getting out of that room. I grabbed my things from there and from that bathroom, and then went straight to the living room to finish packing my bag. I would be going straight to the airport for my meeting anyway. I double-checked everything, closed the door, and dropped the keys in the mail slot on the door just like the note said, and hopped on another Uber. I checked out through the accommodation app and was asked to leave a review, and it actually made me think twice. Normally, I just say something nice and leave 5 stars no matter what. And though I admit that I hit the 5 stars without hesitating on pretty much everything, I couldn't find anything else to say except for simple check-in and check-out process. Clean and had no problems. Thanks. But then I checked the listing again. One of them said, "There is something wrong with this place. My child wouldn't stop crying all night because of the sounds from the kitchen." I scrolled past a few generic ones, but my mouth opened wide when I read a paragraph-long review of an experience similar to mine. It described the sounds, the creaks, and even the strange dreams. This person did have something positive to say about the place near the end, which was that he was traveling with his family and that he liked the odd layout of the house. He specifically mentioned the nightlights on the bedroom where his children stayed. And in his own words, he said that he liked the window, because even though it was oddly placed inside the bedroom, it let him easily check on his kids at night. He was talking about that window. The window I thought was a huge picture on the wall. When I first moved into the dorms, I met one of the resident advisors. She wasn't the one in charge of my floor, but she was always around and was very friendly with everybody, so we looked up to her. Since most of us were freshmen and were excited to find out more about the campus and of some of the secret places that we had read about on the forums, my new roommate and his friends volunteered me to ask Mary, the RA, about the secret places of the school. I was very nervous about it because everyone teased me about liking her or whatever, even though I didn't, but it didn't make it less awkward. At the cafeteria one morning, I got my chance to ask her, and surprisingly, she told me of a few cool places. The university was sort of stuck between several hills, and there were walking paths all along that would take you up and through little valleys. She told me about the empty warehouse, the abandoned stables, but what stuck most with me was the cemetery she mentioned. She was very into paranormal things, I soon found out. According to her, if we walked up one of the hills and looked to the right, we would see a cemetery. All she said was that it was creepy and that they do the walk up there for Halloween, and she was hoping we would join her. But then she asked if she could join us, and to let her know when we were going. I'm not gonna lie, my heart skipped a little bit when she told me that. The teasing had been getting to me. So I tried to convince everybody to go up to the hill and take a look at the cemetery, even though every other option we had sounded a lot cooler to everyone. I was able to convince my roommate, and then he convinced his friends. Then I got Mary to join us too. We met up on a Friday night by the base of the trail and walked up. Mary had brought along one of her friends too, so it turned into a thing. On our way up, we heard strange noises along the bushes, and Mary's friend kept telling us even more creepy things about the trail. And later on she told me one that I ended up believing. But I'll tell you that story a little later. We got up to the top of the hill, and as promised, there was a dimly lit cemetery just across a dirt path. You could see huge headstones, crosses, and even the fencing on the other side of it, away from where we were. So I guess we were looking at the back side of it. One of my roommate's friends climbed up a tree to get a better view, though I think he was just trying to show off his climbing skills to Mary's friend. But when he was sitting at the top, he freaked out and jumped down a branch that was pretty high up. He rolled onto the ground, but apparently he was okay. He looked really pale, and we could see it even in the dark. He started laughing and saying that we should get out of there because he had heard someone whisper in his ear telling him to get out. We all followed along even though we knew he was scared. We were just trying to make him feel less embarrassed, saying that the ghost was probably just trying to make friends, saying that he should have stood up to it and told it to get out first. It was sort of an inside joke for a while, I think. I don't remember it much anymore. What I do remember was the walk back down the hill after we hung out there for a while. We talked about the school and about other scary things we had experienced. Mary wanted to take a picture of the cemetery, but it wasn't coming out very good with those cell phones we used to have back then. I suggested that she lean it against something in order to not get so shaky. She turned me around and pressed the phone against my shoulder, aiming right at the cemetery. I felt that edge of the phone against me, and soon I felt her grip on my arm. She didn't need to explain it. I could see it too. Up ahead, right in front of us, we heard a distinct cry, and we saw a young girl sitting in the middle of the trail. She covered her face with both of her hands. I turned around and looked behind Mary, but everyone else was already heading down the trail. Mary looked more worried than scared, but I must admit I was freaking out inside. Mary stood next to me and grabbed the sleeve of my jacket as she looked at her and asked, "Are you okay?" The girl just cried quietly from about 20 feet in front of us. Mary thought that she was probably lost, but I think back on that dirty white dress and the cries she let out and can't explain why Mary would even consider trying to help her. Mary let go of me and walked up to her, leaning closer until she was midway between me and the girl. "What do we do?" I walked up to Mary as she looked behind me to the group. "Hey guys, wait up," she yelled out. I turned around toward the rest. I could hear some of my roommate's friends make wooing sounds, unsure if they were teasing me for being scared or for being with Mary. But when we turned around, the girl was gone. The rest of the group walked back to us and asked what we had seen, and we told them. Mary's friend even helped us look around. She seemed to be the only person to believe us. She was the one that searched for information about it when we got back to the lobby of our building. She's the one that told us about the eternity ghost. It wasn't the ghost of a little girl all the time. She found reports of a hanging man, of an old woman on a wheelchair, but mostly they were people, or their spirits, to be found walking across a path. She smiled and looked above her laptop screen to look at Mary. They crossed a path of soulmates, she said, looking at me and then back at Mary. Something about the path between the living and the dead, whatever that means. I saw Mary blush for the first time that night. After many years, Mary and I still talk about the eternity ghost every once in a while. We're thinking of going back to that trail during a visit to our old college town. Maybe for our next anniversary. To find out when a new episode gets published, join my list over at scarystorypodcast.com. Or request an invite to our Discord server. You can find the link in the description of this episode. You can also click follow on your favorite podcast player. I'll talk to you soon.